America added 178,000 new jobs. So, well, and oh yeah, I don't feel it, by the way. So let's see why.
Late last week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released its monthly jobs report with some really good news. We had added an extra 178,000 jobs in the month before, and unemployment had fallen by a modest 0.1%. But this raised the obvious
Not
question
happening. Unemployment rate is still high.
Be true. Consumer sentiment has hit its lowest level since the data was first collected, beating out the height of COVID, the global financial crisis, and even the oil shock of the late 70s. The Conference Board survey found that the highest number of consumers ever considered jobs hard to get, and Indeed's data team found that overall,
still hard as hell to get. You know, companies, the government actually implement a regulation for companies to make jobs available, but these companies, they don't have an open position. So right now, if you go to some startup or any company, they have all these positions that are open, but they're ghost positions. They're just doing it to follow the regulations. This is one way that the government can pad their stats and say, oh, we have more open jobs now. But realistically, these companies are not hiring. They just have these open positions because they're following a regulation. And this is how the government can say, oh, yes, there are more jobs now. Yeah, the economy is getting better. Go get it. Go get it, you lazy bum. All right.
The posture amongst the companies they service. Now, perhaps all of these sentiments could be written off as bad vibes amongst people who don't truly appreciate how hot this economy is. Except that, on top of all of this, there is a mountain of data that just straight up contradicts this number. In March alone, when we apparently added 178,000 new jobs, companies announced over 60,000 job cuts.
Yep. You see all these layoffs at like Meta and Google, but they also have open positions. How can you have open positions when you're laying off workers? The math is not mathing. Think about it. Why would they hire anyone if they're laying people off? They obviously don't need people. Why the hell are they hiring people? It makes no sense. But you know, it's regulation. The regulation is forcing them to have these ghost positions open just to follow it.
Its internal data showed low hiring, weekly unemployment claims increased to 219,000, and in the exact same report from the BLS themselves, they noted that the labor force had shrunk by 396,000. So just to make things clear, unemployment claims rose, companies cut jobs, and labor force shrunk. And yet the official jobs figure went up. The overall trust in these figures has been waning for some time now, as massive revisions become commonplace and we swing between massive gains and massive losses every single month. Even here on this channel, I've spent more time than I would like to admit methodically reverse engineering the statistical technicalities that these government departments use to produce their numbers. Because, well,
you know, numbers could just be thrown into the paper. They don't have to make any sense. Money could just, information or money just be thrown into the mess and then it can circulate. It's very simple. They don't have to tell the truth, right? Like if you look at every politician or any news media, they all lie. They lie. They lie. They tell you something just so you can hear it and you can, feel better about it. But realistically, they're not going to do what they promise to you.
It's really important to our everyday lives. But in this case, just basic arithmetic should prove that something is going wrong here.
Yep.
Either some combination of these numbers are just plain wrong, or they are so unintuitive or unreliable that they may as well be disregarded entirely.
Breaking numbers right now. Economists had forecasted 65,000 jobs added.
Major rebound for American workers after shedding more than 130,000 jobs in February.
A blowout jobs number. How much momentum is in this economy?
David, Intel, with its research and development hub in Hillsboro, is laying off workers yet again.
Yeah, Intel is laying people off, but you look at their stock market, that shit is booming. It is popping off. And guess what? They don't need people. They don't need their employees to do it. They just had a mass layoff, and their stock market just skyrocketed by like 100% recently.
Right now, federal workers are bracing for potential mass layoffs as we enter day 3 of a government shutdown.
Trump administration's beginning mass layoffs.
The economy added 172,000 new private sector jobs to kick off the year.
Private sector, see that? These are the companies that have to follow these hiring regulations, you know, have open positions that are non-functional.
The States added 172,000 jobs in the private sector.
Private sector.
So when you read a headline or listen to a politician talking about all of the jobs they have just created, the number they are talking about is almost always the Bureau of Labor Statistics' total non-farm payroll count. It is the number that moves bond yields the morning it gets released, the number that sets the tone for Federal Reserve meetings, and the number that politicians on both sides of the aisle will use to claim that the economy is either roaring or collapsing depending on what suits them that week. The problem is that more and more over time, it has slowly stopped describing the thing most people actually mean when they hear the word jobs. When the BLS says 178,000 jobs were added, most people hear 178 previously unemployed Americans waking up to a new paycheck.
Oh.
What it actually means is something much, much more complicated and significantly less reassuring. To understand why these numbers have drifted so far away from what they sound like, you need to look at where they actually come from. The Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't have a magic real-time feed of every paycheck in the United States. Despite what you might assume, in 2026, with the IRS sitting on a real-time withholding database that could, in theory, tell you exactly how many workers got paid in any given week, that's not the data we use. Instead, every single month, the BLS runs 2 completely separate surveys. The Establishment Survey and the Household Survey.
Household
The former surveys
survey.
individual business sites and offices and gathers data on how many people they have on their payroll, what those people do for work, and where that job site is actually physically located.
Okay.
Latter, as the name might suggest, surveys hundreds of thousands of households to ask them if they lost their job, got a job,
That one will be the honest one, right?
remained employed, or unemployed. The results of one of them gets printed on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Okay, yeah. So the government would pick the better result one, and then they would put it on newspapers, you know, just to pad their stats.
While the other one gets quietly buried in the back of the same report.
Oh shit! Let's look at this. Unemployed, Ooh. Yep.
Now, logically, in a healthy data ecosystem, the 2 surveys should be moving in roughly the same direction most of the time, with small disagreements at the margins. That used to be the
Fucking
case. For
LinkedIn.
most
That
of the
shit
post-war
sucks.
period, the establishment number and the
Don't think about finding a job on LinkedIn. You can set up a profile. People can look for you and hire and headhunt you. But LinkedIn, for the most part, is just a platform for you to advertise your business. If you have a professional business, right? Obviously, you cannot have an OnlyFans and advertise it on LinkedIn.
household number tracked each other reasonably well. When one said the labor market was strong, the other almost always agreed. However, over the last decade, that relationship has visibly broken down. Economists at the San Francisco Fed have published research showing that the gap between the 2 surveys has widened to its largest level since they started keeping records, and the divergence has accelerated specifically in the period after 2020. In plain English, the 2 numbers that are supposed to be measuring the same thing are increasingly telling us 2 completely different stories about the American labor market.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Trump. Like, I don't have a thing against the guy, but he is pretty famous for lying in a way that it benefits him. And I don't blame him. Barack Obama did the same thing.
And the one we have decided to focus on is the one that, structurally, is set up to look better than reality almost every single month. Again, just last month, the payroll survey said we gained 178,000 new jobs, while the back of the report, households claimed to have lost 64,000, which really just shouldn't be possible. Now you might be thinking, this is the kind of thing the BLS would be quietly working to fix in the background. And to their credit, in their own technical notes, they actually admit a lot of these problems. They published the household number.
Yeah, but no one's gonna read this shit. Look at that. Look how, dude, man, that is 2 surveys. I mean, 2 essays. No one's gonna read that crap. No common person has the time to read it. Okay, they're too busy working 10 hours a day.
They publish the revisions, they publish footnotes on methodology, and they publish their own confidence intervals. The catch is that nobody who isn't paid to do this for a living ever reads any of that. Markets react to the headline, politicians react to the headline, business owners deciding whether to hire react to the headline, workers deciding whether their job is safe react to the headline. And the headline keeps coming from the survey that has the worst structural fit for what the modern American economy actually looks like. Which raises the obvious question. How has this number become so divorced from reality? And why do we even pay attention to it anymore? Well, it's time to learn how money works to find out what the monthly jobs report is actually measuring, why it keeps contradicting itself by hundreds of thousands of workers in the exact...
My theory is that they're going to put out false data, these stat padding datas, in order to keep people pleased. Like, oh yeah, according to the data, we're doing really good. But in reality, we're actually kind of we're in the same spot as like 5 years ago.
Vaccine report, and why nobody actually wants to fix it. Every week, there's another massive data breach, another AI model scraping personal data.
Excuse me, sorry, coming through.
Conclude that the agencies putting them together are just trying to make the politicians they answer to look good.
Yep.
However, at the very least, before we attribute this all to malice, we should understand how it is much more likely to just be statistical stupidity. And to that end, there are really 3 big problems with how we come up with this number. And the first simple problem is that payrolls are not people. The Establishment Survey does exactly what the name suggests. It surveys establishments and asks them how many payrolls they processed that month.
Oh, yeah. I worked with big companies before, and accounting can, get very skewed. I know people that are committing straight up accounting crimes for big companies. And it makes their Q1, Q2, Q3 look really good, even though when they're not doing that good.
The time this data source was first conducted, it was a perfectly reasonable proxy for how many people have jobs. One person, one employer, one payroll. This is still the norm for most employees, but it's getting less and less normal every year. These days, a single person can be attached to multiple payrolls, and the number going up doesn't necessarily mean a new person got a new job. It might just mean an existing worker picked up a second one to keep up with rent. The most extreme version of this shows up in healthcare, where it's pretty commonplace for doctors and nurses to work across multiple different establishments. A single doctor working at a hospital, a private practice, and doing some research on the side could technically add 3 payrolls to the the official number, while only being one single working person. This technicality was particularly important for last month's job numbers because it also counted 35,000 healthcare professionals returning to work after having been on strike the month before.
Oh yeah, dude, this is another way to pad your stats, right? You could have a guy that's working a regular job, but then it's not enough to pay his mortgage, so he's working at Lyft, or Uber, or doing DoorDash or whatever, right? Or working at WAG, walking dogs. This is and then, like one person can say, oh yes, the government could say, oh, look at that, 5 more jobs, right? When there's one person working those 5 jobs.
Hopefully, it should go without saying that this isn't the same thing as the economy genuinely providing employment opportunities to 35,000 new people.
Correct. But the government wants to take credit for it.
What data does is look at payrolls every month. So the Establishment Survey says we added 178,000 payrolls. The Household Survey in the same report on the same day says 64,000 fewer humans actually have work. Both of these numbers are technically true. They are just measuring different things, and almost nobody outside of macro nerds ever bothers to look at the second one. Which brings us to problem number 2, the methodology. Collecting payroll data at the scale of the entire American economy is genuinely impossible, and the model the BLS uses to do it is becoming increasingly outdated. Payrolls are not counted firm to firm, but rather location to location. Again, the establishment in the Establishment Survey means a survey of individual, establishments. So as more and more people move into jobs that are work from home, jobs that move between cities, or jobs that run out of a head office on the other side of the country, it has become much harder to accurately assign those payrolls to a real workplace and monitor them month to month. Double counting, undercounting, and plain old misunderstandings about what payrolls should count have just become far more common as our working arrangements have become less rigid. This is part of the reason why revisions have gotten so embarrassingly large. Last year alone, the BLS quietly revised away 800,000 jobs that they had previously claimed were added, meaning the headline number for an entire chunk of the year was just wrong.
Yeah. Damn, man. Well, I mean, this is how this current government system works, right? You got to have those good headlines to keep people calm because, you know, this presidency and the previous presidency and the one before that, well, actually, I don't know about the one before that. That's going too far. Let's just keep it simple. Like right now, job market is trash, hot garbage. And right now, but then, you know, Biden, he didn't thought about this, right? Keeping people calm. But then he's too busy, like, you know, being getting his cancer treatment and being worried about getting criminalized because his son is all the way in Ukraine doing something with the money that they sent to Ukraine. And then, but then Trump, he's executing this plan where you essentially lie to the people and say, hey, look, you know, we got way more jobs during my presidency. Look, I'm fixing the economy. Ask yourself this. Do you feel like the economy is fixed? Just ask yourself, right? Also, he said that the gas prices will be lower, right? Because during Biden's presidency, the gas prices was around $6 or $7. Right now, the gas prices are about $6. It have not hit $7 yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. So, but then I'll give him some credit. Crime rate went down.
You can actually go and look up the exact collection methodology that the BLS uses on their website. And you can see it was designed for a time when most people either went to a factory or an office, did their hours, and went home every day. To try and balance this out, the BLS also uses something called the births and deaths model, which is essentially a statistical estimate of how many businesses they think were created or shut down in any given month, used to fill in the gaps that the survey itself can't capture. The births and deaths model has its own problems, but the biggest one is that it is heavily skewed by the proliferation of gig work, which we have mentioned a few times in previous videos.
Gig work. Ugh. This is so sad. Well, I think it's really great that Uber is providing gig work, but then it does cut down the amount of profit that you can make from gig work. Remember back then, you know, if you want to be if you want to do delivery work, you go to a pizza joint and then you could just deliver pizza and you make like decent amount, you know, like $20 an hour. But now you work for Uber Foods, Uber Eats. You make like $15 or $10 an hour. You know, the profit margins are absolutely trash.
A new business in this model can be a guy who started driving for Uber last week. That gets counted as a new job-creating enterprise, even though it is functionally a person without stable employment trying to make rent. So the survey itself misses the modern workforce, and the model designed to patch the survey is also calibrated for a workforce that doesn't really exist anymore. Now, these growing blind spots in one of the most important metrics in our economy is not great. But it gets worse. The third problem is by far the biggest one, and that is the people the payroll survey doesn't see at all. The establishment survey, by its very nature, tends to count people in traditional payroll jobs, which on average means more secure positions with more established employers who actually respond to voluntary BLS requests. An increasingly large share of the American workforce does not fit any of those descriptions. They are private contractors. And this is not just gig workers. This includes everyone from a guy delivering groceries through DoorDash all the way up to extremely high-end technical
I knew it. I was right.
Consultants, freelance software engineers, and well, yeah, basically the entire creator economy.
So even if you sold some trash on Etsy, that would mean that you are employed and you added the statistic to pad the stats for the government. Good job.
Can't forget about the real heroes. These people get counted as employed or unemployed by the household survey, and if they lose their work, it still sucks just as much as anybody else losing their job. but they are completely invisible to payroll. They are also, conveniently, the people most likely to lose their work before anybody else in more secure formal roles. When a company starts to feel a downturn coming, the first line items to get cut are not the staff with employment contracts and severance packages. The first to go are the contractors, the freelancers, the agency the marketing team was using, the consultants, and the, in-office life coaches that teach the CEO how to act human. None of those people show up as layoffs on press releases. None of them show up in the establishment survey. And it can take weeks or months before they
That's right. You don't want layoffs to, get on the news, right? Because it's just bad PR. But at the same time, it's not that bad in particular. If the company wanted to, they could do a better job hiding their layoffs. But, for the most part, they don't really care. As a matter of fact, for some companies, laying people off is a good thing. Like investors love seeing people get laid off. That way, less costs, right? And more money to go into the investor's pocket. You can look at Visa is a good example. I think they had their best quarter in like the past decade. They laid off 200 workers, and after that, their stock market went up by 20%. Investors love layoffs. Because when people are laid off, that means that those workers are not needed, and then the cost is cut down, and then more money will be, available for taking.
Show up in unemployment claims, because most of them aren't eligible to file in the first place. This is how the labor force can fall by almost 400,000 people in a single month, while payrolls technically still go up. The two surveys are just capturing two very different groups of workers, and those groups are drifting further apart every year. One group is on a W-2 in an HR system with their payroll processed by a service the BLS already knows how to call. The other is invoicing clients, paying their own taxes, and disappearing from the data the second the contract dries up. Which raises a perfectly reasonable question. If the payroll survey is flawed, why do we still use it? Well, two reasons. The first is that it's fast. It can give us monthly data with comparatively little collection, which matters for an economy where the Fed and the government need to make decisions on a near real-time basis. The second is that the payroll...
Yeah, and as soon as the stats look bad, don't say anything. Shh, quiet, don't say it, they won't notice.
Survey is reliable-ishly unreliable. Businesses are not exactly motivated to make up payrolls to boost national statistics.
Yep.
Whereas individual households can be coy about their employment situation for all kinds of reasons. People who have a job are less likely to answer the phone for a BLS survey because they are, well, working. People who just lost one might tailor their response out of embarrassment or genuine confusion about what counts as actively looking for work.
Yeah, that's true. You may think it's not that embarrassing, losing your job, right? Most of you that are watching, but trust me, a lot of people are embarrassed about being unemployed. Lots of people. I personally know a fair amount of people that do not want to talk about it when they have lost their jobs.
There is also a less talked about timing problem. The household survey covers the week containing the 12th of the month. So a person who loses their job on the 13th keeps counting as employed for another 4 weeks before the data even has a chance to catch up. So the household survey is not some pristine alternative the BLS is just refusing to use.
Another way to pad stats.
Real problems. Now, I know this again sounds like boring money man rants about data collection methodologies for 15 minutes straight, but this really does matter for two reasons. The first is that, of course, these numbers get used to make real decisions that affect us. Federal Reserve policy on interest rates, stimulus debates in Congress, how foreign investors price treasury yields, and ironically, it even feeds into a business's own plans to hire. If companies see unemployment rising and headline payrolls falling, they become more risk-averse, which leads to less hiring, which leads to less consumer spending, which leads to even less hiring. So it's just as important to make sure that these numbers don't look...
That's why accountants get paid so well. They essentially lie on the journal entries, and then they can make the company stats look better. All right, and then it's a good regulation to follow. You know, the keep a bunch of jobs open to follow. That way they can, you know, pat their stats and say that, oh yeah, we're making enough revenue to hire more people. Look at us, we're doing really good.
Artificially pessimistic as it is to make sure they don't look artificially optimistic. The second reason this is so important to understand is that if these numbers keep looking like total nonsense, it becomes easy.
That's why, you know, if you were just quick tip, I mean, well, this is entertainment, is not advice for finance, but quarter reports realistically in the long run does not affect stock prices. It may affect it for the first day or maybe second day, but after that, it snaps back to normal or it goes back to its normal trajectory.
Easier for people to dismiss them as useless at best or outright propaganda.
Entertainment advice. I mean, entertainment,
not having
not
faith
advice.
in our economic statistics is a great way to undermine faith in the economy as a whole. Now, the economists at the BLS know all of this. They have written papers about it. Statistics agencies in other developed economies have already started rebalancing. The reason the United States hasn't is structural. Changing the methodology would create a one-time discontinuity in the data series, which makes year-over-year comparisons look weird, which the market hates. It would also require the BLS to admit, on the record, that the number it has been publishing for decades isn't really measuring what people thought it was, which is the kind of admission federal agencies do not love making in front of a Congress that is already gunning to cut their funding. And on top of all of that, every administration in power has a quiet incentive to leave a politically convenient noise generator exactly where it is. A monthly number that can swing 200,000 jobs in either direction based on which
That is just insane, you know, like, oh, there's 200,000 jobs. When 200,000 jobs are lost, don't say anything. Shh, 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 shh. Quiet, guys. Okay, you don't want these brokies to panic, all right? Yeah, we have negative 2,000 jobs, but it's best they don't know, okay? Shh, keep it between you and me.
Doctors happen to be on strike that month is incredibly useful if you are the one writing the press release. So the number stays, the methodology stays, the revisions get larger, and the gap between the headline and the lived experience of the labor market keeps widening. Which means, for the foreseeable future, the most quoted economic statistic in the United States is going to keep telling a story that fewer and fewer working people actually recognize. Now, if all of that wasn't enough, go and watch this video next to further understand how to lie with statistics.
Yeah, so, I mean, one good way to measure if the economy is getting better or not, go outside. Go outside, look at the gas prices, look at the egg prices, right? Remember Trump's promises, right? He said that the gas prices will be lower, there will be no wars. No wars, you know, that the one in Iran doesn't count. All right, that's not a war. That's annihilation. Okay, it's a war if we're getting fucked too, but we're fucking them. So that's not war. That's us destroying them. Economy is supposed to get better, but you know, personally, 20% of my friends got laid off for the past 2 years, and. Right. I also know some other people that that came to my job asking me if they're hiring. Right. I have these homeless people coming to me like, hey, is your company hiring? Oh, I could work. Sorry, man. I can't help you. I'm sorry. It's just, it's out of my power. You know, it's. All in all, you know, you just go out and look for yourself, right? And you can easily judge just by observation and analysis, because there's still a lot of homeless people where I live, and it's not pleasant. But then at least the crime rate has gone down, and to Trump's credit, he did release the Epstein files, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And in the miracle that he has a third term for some fucked up reason, definitely not voting for him for sure. I'm gonna go for anyone but him just because his promise fell through. But yeah,